Making our members' working lives easier is the primary role of a professional body like the Institute of the Motor Industry. That's why the IMI runs campaigns to influence politicians and the public to bring about change that makes a difference to the motor trade and the people working in it. It's a tricky business because thousands of organisations, companies, trade unions, lobby groups are all trying to do the same thing. The trick is to educate as many people as possible about your issue, persuade opinion formers that you're right and that your demands are in the public interest. Build up as much support and engagement in the industry as you can, and then seize your opportunity when the political circumstances are right to get maximum impact. The IMI's campaign to win legislation to protect technicians working on electric vehicles is a case in point.
There's just not enough engineers out there and people able to fix these cars if they break down.
Yeah, well, we've been campaigning with the government to introduce licensing because these, I mean, a typical passenger car could have, carry sort of 600 volts. A heavy vehicle could be up to 1,000 volts, and that's dangerous to work on if you don't know what you're doing. But we're saying at the same time, most of that 1% work for manufacturers, dealers, and if you want a truly competitive market, the government need to invest some of that money in helping people get trained, because at the moment you could pay up to 50% more to insure one of these cars than a comparable petrol or diesel car, and that's because the insurance industry just look and say there aren't enough people around to repair them.
Since 2015, the IMI has been attempting to persuade a government that is totally opposed to red tape, even for health and safety, that untrained staff are in danger of being killed if they're allowed to work on electric cars.
The IMI's campaign for licensing has been going on for over a year now, well over a year. It started with us taking some MPs. We took them to the BMW Academy just so that they could understand how different the technology is in electric and hybrid vehicles, because that was something they didn't understand. That was very effective because a number of the MPs who came along kind of saw the light, literally, and went and asked questions in the House and so on. We then followed that up with a report that we commissioned through an academic, Professor Jim Saker of Loughborough University, and that was very powerful in getting across a message. If the government wants to realise the benefits of the new technology, we have to make some investments, and that includes in the training and development of people. We raised an amendment to something called the Vehicle Technology and Aviation Bill, which is all about laying the ground for the new technologies, electric cars, hybrid cars, autonomous cars. That was to ask for licensing. That was helped through with us, that our honorary fellow, the MP Richard Burden, helped us with that. We also had a meeting set up with John Hayes, Minister of Transport. That got postponed because of the election, but we're in the process of making that again. We're also in the process of setting up a meeting with Sadiq Khan and the London Assembly. And at this point in time, there's a new bill going through Parliament called the Automated Electric Vehicles Bill. And we're working on an amendment to that too, which again is around licensing. It's like a constantly dripping tap. You have to sort of keep the pressure on. But we have a really good body of support now within Parliament. I think the work we did on the last bill means that there is a much more general understanding of the point we've been trying to make than was ever the case before.
Building a public narrative around an issue is very important. Now, IMI PR manager Emma Mitchell explains how she takes opportunities to get the story around this campaign into the media as often as she can.
Today's story focuses on the increase in electric vehicles compared to the increase in the charging infrastructure. We've seen a dramatic increase in electric cars. In fact, they've grown by 46% this year, considering charging infrastructure has only grown by 16%. We follow hot topics that are going on in the news, and considering electric vehicles have been mentioned every day for the last few weeks, it's about time that we regenerated our campaign on electrics. Previous stories we focused on include the consumer demand for electric vehicles, the Clean Air Act, and the need for a licence for technicians working on these high voltage vehicles. When we first started our campaign on electric vehicles, journalists were a bit wary about featuring the story, but since more has been mentioned in the press, with Volvo turning all their fleet to electric by 2019 and the Clean Air Act, more journalists have begun featuring the stories each time we taken to press.
Who do you think should be paying for this? Does it need to be central government? Should it be the rest of the motor industry? Who needs to foot the bill?
I definitely think central government have a big part to play, because this is the biggest change we've seen in the motor industry since the motor industry began, really. I mean, in over 100 years, we've been developing and refining the same technology. It's ironic, really, that the electric motor's been around longer than the internal combustion engine, so it's taken a long time to be the new technology, if you like.
Today, Steve's actually featured on over 20 radio stations across the country discussing the increase in electric vehicles and the importance for technicians to be trained.
Now, a week's a very long time in politics. Things can change in the blink of an eye. Since the election and the loss of the government's majority, and of course recent tragic events involving failures of regulation, the IMI has been presented with an opportunity to win concessions on regulation. Richard Burden MP, chair of the All-Party Automotive Group and an honorary fellow of the IMI, told us what's happening right now.
When the last bill was before Parliament, I think one of the real contributions that IMI made was getting on the agenda the issue of a proper licensing and accreditation scheme for people who work on very, very powerful electric vehicles. Let's remember that, the average household, you're dealing with electricity of around 240 volts. With electric vehicles, you're talking about 600 volts and upwards. And I think the point that IMI was making, and we were arguing this in committee, was that if you wouldn't get an unqualified electrician in to look after your gas or look after your electricity in your home, it's a bit strange. You might go to an unqualified person. Actually, if you need your car service when it's electric and is arguably more powerful. So I think the idea of a proper licensing and accreditation scheme, it's an idea whose time has come. That's something I think it's right that the IMI argues for on the new bill when it comes forward. And to show not only is that important from the point of view of safety, but also in terms of upskilling our industry in the way that is really, really important.
So there you go. It's all hands to the pump to make change for technicians and for businesses in the motor industry. Watch this space as the sparks fly.